And now we come to Abram. Now, Abram, his story isn't very long, which is the surprising thing, considering he is known as the father of the Jews. And there's many examples and lessons that we can learn from him, as well as the display of the greatest faith that has really ever existed. And I'm saying that knowing of Jeremiah, Daniel, Moses, David, just to name a few. But Abram, I have to say, displays the greatest faith of anyone in history. And I'm very excited to get to that. But today we're going to be looking at Abram's origin story, for lack of a better term. Now, we know he was born to the son of a man named Terah, and he was in Canaan with his wife Sarai, who was barren. At this time, men did not live nearly as long as they did in the time of the flood. Noah lived, want to say, around 600 years. Abram's father, Terah, lived 205. And at the time where God calls Abram is 75 years old. His wife is past childbearing age. But God calls him out and tells him to go to a land named Canaan, which he'll give to him. And that he'll be the father of a nation. And this is really the first example of faith that we see from Abram, because he does it. There's no record of him questioning God, asking, hey, can you go ahead and explain a little? I know if I was ever told something like that, I would appreciate an explanation. But nothing. Simply gathers up his things, his wife, leaves. And we know because later on in the story that it says his nephew Lot was with him, that he did have a small holding, but really at this time, your family was your wealth, your life. So, and there were really large family groups and clans. So, to cast yourself out, you were essentially going at the world alone, and there wasn't much of a chance that you would stay even, let alone get ahead. But with no concern at all, he goes ahead and sets out. And we're going to go ahead and look at the beginning, which is Genesis 12, 1 through 3. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all the families of the earth be blessed. That's not just, hey, you're going to be blessed, you're going to prosper, don't worry. That is a huge promise. And Abram doesn't question it once. Just leaves. Now, a famine occurred. We don't know how long after, but we don't assume it's very long. And he actually went to Egypt, which I actually have to love the Bible, its symbolisms, its cycles, because we have Joseph, much later on, going to Egypt during a famine, gaining riches, and then further on, a few hundred years later, the children of Israel leave Egypt and essentially cast out. The Pharaoh goes, get out of here. And it goes along kind of the same cycle. Spoilers, which will be cleared up here in a minute. So he was actually afraid of going down to Egypt because apparently Sarai, his wife, was very beautiful. And he was afraid that the Pharaoh was going to kill him and take Sarai to be his own. So he actually asks her, tell them you're my sister. We're not going to be man and wife. We're going to act like brother and sister. That way he doesn't kill me. And we'll be safe. But as it turns out, Pharaoh did see Sarai, take her into his household, quite most likely as a concubine, and he treated Abram very well, it tells us. He gave him a lot of gifts. We've got oxen, donkeys, servants, camels. And then a plague hits Pharaoh's house. All we're told it was a great plague. And Pharaoh calls Abram to him, and he doesn't even ask. He knows. We're going to look at Genesis 12, 18, and through 19. Now, and Pharaoh called Abram and said, "What is this that thou hast done to me? And why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why sayest thou, She is my sister, so I might have taken her to me to wife? Now therefore, behold thy wife, take her, and go thy way." And 20 is, "And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had." So essentially the cycle is, arrive during a famine, and get riches. Plagues happen, get kicked out, which is what happened very drawn out, for lack of a better term, when it was Joseph and then further on Moses. Kind of like foreshadowing. So when Abram departed from Canaan, and mentioned before that we knew Lot was with him, and this is where Lot comes up, he was very rich, and actually Lot's herdsmen and his herdsmen started having strife. It doesn't tell us what kind, but we know that there was strife. Abram didn't want a war between his family. We know he loved Lot, and he actually took Lot up to a mountaintop and said, "Look, here's the east, here's the west." I did that wrong. Here's the west, here's the east. Left hand, right hand. You choose one way, I'll choose the other. We'll split. I will not go over there, you won't go over here. You get first pick. And Lot chose the side that had Sodom in it, and if that name sounds familiar, well, it should. It will come along further in the story, not too much longer, I promise. Lot chose Sodom, which we were told was not a nice place. It was the Mos Eisley of this area. Star Wars references. And Abram agreed. They left the way. But that's when God comes to Abram again and really renews and almost adds on to his promise. And that's Genesis 13, 14 through 7, which we're going to check on over right now. "And the Lord said unto Abram, after Lot was separated from him, Lift up now thine eyes, and look from thy place where thou art northward, and southward, and eastward, and westward. For all the land which thou seest, to thee I will give it, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth, so that if a man can number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed also be numbered. Arise, walk through the land in the length of it, and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee." And honestly, it really warms the heart. Because here is Abram saying, "Hey, Lot, you have the first pick. You go, oh, you're taking a place that's very, very bountiful. Okay, I will stick to my promise. I will stay over here." And then God comes and two things happen. He renews and adds on to the promise, telling Abram, "You're not alone." And kind of then going, all of this is going to be yours. All of the earth. You're setting yourself in this place, and kind of tells us Abram's kind of humble. No, this all is going to be yours. This is my promise to you. You don't set the boundaries. I do. Abram never really reached for more than was his. And that's greatly displayed in the next part of the story, which is a war. Now, following this, the kings came up against Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot and his house were there, and they sacked the city. They took people hostage, they took all the wealth, and they left. Not long after, Abram receives word of this, and immediately, without question or worry, he goes ahead and takes the 308 men he has. These weren't just the 308 men who were in camp. These were, we're told, 308 servants trained for war. These were his soldiers, dedicated. And we're about to have company. So, anyways, barring that interruption, so, back to it, he takes his 308 men who are trained for war, and shut the door!
You can edit, you know.
I was born in a barn and I don't live in one. 308 men, he tracks down these kings. He pursues them. He overtakes them, puts them to the sword, and takes back everything that they've stolen. Everything. Rescues Lot, his house, people, and the wealth of Sodom. Takes them back. And this is where something very curious happens. We're going to go ahead and get to the right page of notes. We're going to look at Genesis 14, and we're actually going to look at 17 through 24. Now, Abram meets two men on his return, the king of Salem and the king of Sodom. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of, I'm not going to try to pronounce that name, and of the kings that were with him, at the valley of Sheva, which is the king's dale. And the king of Salem, which I'm also not going to pronounce the name of, because I can't, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, possessor of heaven and earth. And blessed be the Most High God, which hath delivered thine enemies into thy hand. And he gave him tithes of all. Doesn't tell us who, but I believe that means Abram gave the priest for the temple tithes to God. And the king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons, and take the goods to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto the Lord, the Most High God, and possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread even to a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is thine, lest thou shouldst say, I have made Abram rich, save only with that which young men have eaten, and the portion of the men which went with me. I'm not going to try to pronounce those three men's names, because I can't. Let them take their portion. And this is where we have Abram's trust in God and humbleness really brought to light. The first man he met was a priest of God, who says, You're blessed, and also, blessed be God, who gave you this victory. And he went in and gave him refreshments, and we understand, and God and Abram gave him tithe. Abram acknowledged God gave him the victory. He acknowledged everything about it, that it wasn't his. And he never tried to reach for more than it was his. He was always humble. And when he saw King of Sodom essentially said, keep all of this wealth, and he went, no, is a very good indication of he never reached for more than was his, more than he earned. And this is a lesson that when you're going through life, never take more than is yours. Earn everything you have. Continuing on, you want to be very careful when people are trying to give you great gifts, because everything you should have should be earned. And if you're trying to live a righteous life, then you are acknowledging that God is blessing you. And honestly, in a way, it makes it very much easier to be generous with what you have, because instead of going, oh, it's mine, it's mine. It's like, none of this is mine. You're a steward. So when others need help, you're like, oh, this was never mine to have anyways. Here, have some. When you start going, oh, it's mine, or this dude over here, hey, he helped me. It's when you start getting greedy and prideful. And right here we have Abram going, no, this is yours. I'm not taking any of it. I don't want you to say, I got to where I was because of you. All what I have is the Lord's. And it is a very good example, even if you don't believe in Christianity, of really how to live your life. To earn what you have, never reach for more, and never really seek out easy ways to get rich or great gifts. Nothing's ever free in this life, and a gift of wealth definitely isn't. Now, after this meeting, God again renews his promise to Abram. And the fact that really he has no child, it's starting to weigh on Abram. And God, actually, let's go ahead and look at the third time where God renews his promise. And that's 15 verse 3. And Abram said, Behold, to me that has given no seed, and lo, one who is born in my house is mine heir. And behold, the word of God came unto him, saying, This shall not be thine heir. And that was the steward of his house, Eliezer of Damascus. But he that shall come forth out of thine own bowels shall be thine heir. And he brought him forth abroad, and said, Look now towards heaven, and tell the stars, if thou art able to number them. And he said unto him, So shall thy seed be. And he believed in the Lord, and counted it to him for righteousness. Again, Abram was not a man who never doubted, who never worried. But despite this, despite it finally welling up as, I don't have a kid. You promised me, but I don't have a kid. I don't have an heir. And then God renews his promise once more, and Abram's like, so be it. I believe you. Everyone is going to worry. You're going to doubt. You're going to wake up one morning going, is everything fake? Is everything I believe in a lie? And, yeah, God doesn't talk to us like he talked to Abram or Moses or David. Does he have to? Abram didn't have a Bible. It wasn't written then. He had the Word of God. No concrete proof, really nothing that came before any. He was the precedent for so many promises that we see today. So, it was like first person ever going on the Oregon Trail. Hey, are we going to make it there alive? And they left us a roadmap. Every promise that God has ever made. So, no, he really doesn't have to speak to you directly, because he already has. He left us a roadmap. He left us his promises. And we're not there yet, but this is a good time to bring up in Jesus' time with his disciples. When he rose from the dead, there was one, and word was brought back to the disciples by a couple others that Jesus had been raised. I want to say it was Peter and John that brought the news back. Thomas said, I will not believe it until I feel the cut of the spear that pierced him and put my fingers in the scar and the holes in his hands and feet. Not the exact quote, but close enough. And Jesus appeared to him and said, here's the cut on my side. Here's the scars on my hands. Blessed are you because you believe, but blessed are those who essentially will not have this evidence, this person standing in front of them, and will still believe. So, in a way, when you're doubting, and when you're worried and you can't see the path ahead, the Lord of creation has faith in you, so have a little in yourself. Next week, we are going to look at one of the greatest acts of faith, or that's not quite correct, the greatest act of faith that anyone has ever performed. Thank you for watching Christianity 101. Hope to see you next week, and until then, God bless.